hosted listening session around the fall bump, specifically regarding PPB. The PCCEP co-chairs will be facilitating this meeting, and I'm going to introduce them in just a few minutes. First, I just wanted to talk about some general housekeeping. Please be aware that wherever you are zooming in from today in this country, in this state, and in Portland, you're on Indigenous land. Our Native people reside here and are important members of this community. During today's meeting, we'll be live streaming and recording. If you would like to use the ASL services, please let me know and I will direct you. Please keep yourself muted and your video off unless you are speaking. When we get to the community questions and comments section of this meeting, the co-chairs will call on participants who raise their hands. If you're unable to raise your hand, please message me, Theo Lada, and I will let the co-chairs know that you'd like to speak. When it's your turn to speak, please be respectful. Anyone who engages in hate speech, white supremacy rhetoric, or personal attacks, you'll be removed from the call. I recognize and thank the commissioners and Mayor Wheeler for taking time out of their ridiculous schedules to join us here. Thank you very much. It's important to note that the PCCEP here, the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing, believes in asking the community for their insight in order to allow that community expertise to create change. So this conversation certainly doesn't end here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Theo Lada. I'm the PCCEP Project Director, and I'm going to turn it over to Lakiana Drury and Dr. Elliot Young. It's the first time I've introduced him as Dr. Young, just because it's fun to do. So please take it away.
Thanks, Theo. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. Mayor Wheeler, our city council members, really appreciate you all taking the time tonight. We are going to be looking at the fall bump and really looking at where the money is being spent and how that process is going now that we are a little ways into this fiscal year. Just as Theo had mentioned, we want to make sure that we are being respectful of everybody in this room. You know, we can have different opinions all day long, but everyone's taking time out to be here and to be heard and to share and to serve. And so we ask that, and there will be zero tolerance for individuals who are not adhering to that. The format of the meeting, we're going to hear statements from the city budget office a little bit about the bump process, which is the budget monitoring process. And then we're going to open it up to community and PCCEP questions around the bump process in general. And then the second part will be facilitated by Elliot, who will field questions specifically around the Portland Police Bureau budget. So we're going to break it up into two of those spaces. In this first section, we'll hear a couple presentations, have community comments, and then we will allow city council members and the mayor to respond to those. So we'll just kind of ask that y'all hold your responses until we've heard from community members. And then, yeah, I'll turn it over to Elliot for the second part of the meeting. I'm gonna have Elliot introduce himself, and then if we can have our PCCEP committee members introduce themselves. I'll try and call you off based on who I can see is here right now. Elliot.
Hi, I'm Elliot Young, the other co-chair. When I don't go by doctor, I go by comrade. Thank you.
And there's a little bit of a lag there, just so you know.
Should we call on the other people again?
Yep, I'm just gonna call them folks. We'll go with Vadim.
Hi, everybody. Vadim Mazursky, Secretary of PCCEP. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks. Ann, are you here?
Hi, everyone. Ann Campbell. Thanks for being here tonight.
We'll go with Yolanda.
Good evening, everyone. Yolanda Salguero, PCCEP member. Thank you.
Amy.
Hello, Amy Anderson, Chair of the Behavioral Health Subcommittee.
I'm not seeing anyone else from PCCEP on here, but I'm sure I'm missing a couple folks. Go ahead. Is it someone else? Okay, so we're gonna keep it moving. Appreciate all the PCCEP members that are here tonight. Again, we wanna keep this respectful. This is an electronically recorded meeting, so I think it's being recorded, correct? Yeah. Okay, so I mean, obviously the purpose of us being here tonight is to be able to walk through the fall bump process and to have community input, and not only have community input, but hear it directly to city council members. So we again appreciate them for being here and for taking this time to discuss this. And really the framing question is, how does Portland want its money to be spent, right? And when we consider the various budgets of the bureaus, and looking at, especially with regards to how PCCEP operates around community safety, and realizing that this is an ongoing process and that at the end of the day, these are community tax dollars, making sure they're being spent in the best way possible and in the way that serves the community. I also want us to be aware as we are going through this process that as we talk about numbers and funding and programs, that at the end of the day, these programs and these dollars are impacting people's lives. So they're not just numbers on spreadsheets, they're impacting people, and people have lost their lives in regards to how money is spent or what programs exist in our community. And so I just wanted to open up with a moment of silence to remember the people that we have lost. And one individual in particular that comes to mind tonight is Patrick Kimmons, who was killed 2 years ago tomorrow. So we're going to start with just a 30-second moment of silence to think about these individuals. Thank you for observing that moment of silence. I'm now going to turn it over to Jessica Kenard, who's the budget director, to give us a little introduction about Budgeting 101 and share a presentation with us. Jessica?
Yeah, thank you, Luciana, and thank you, members of PCCEP, for inviting us here tonight. I'm Jessica Kenard. I'm the city's budget director. I'm here just to provide you with a pretty brief overview of the city's budget, how it's organized, the services we support, how the money's allocated across the city, and then talk a little bit about our budget processes and specifically the fall bump process that we have in front of us right now. The goal is to just provide some background and context for you to be able to engage with us, with your elected leaders, in a way that that you feel like is empowered, with sort of the information and the context of what they're working on and what's the decisions that are in front of them. After I speak, I'm going to turn it over to Katy Scheifele, who's a principal financial analyst in my office, and she, the city budget office has analysts that are assigned to work on different bureau assignments, and so she works on the police bureau assignment, and she is the person in our office that provides sort of the analysis on police issues. So she's going to speak a little bit around the construction of the Police Bureau's budget, around the changes that were made to the Police Bureau's budget over the last 6 months, funding that has been reallocated, funding that has not yet been reallocated, some of the decision points that are in front of council currently in relation to the fall bump. She is not the best person to answer really specific questions around Portland Police Bureau finances and budget. That would be the finance staff within the Police Bureau. We have asked them to join tonight, so they should be on the line and available to answer more specific questions should you have them. But we are certainly here, and I am able to answer any questions to the best of my ability around the overall city budget and our processes. So with that, I will get into the presentation. So as many of you know, the City of Portland provides a suite of specific services. We're one of many local jurisdictions that provide services to Portlanders. So there's county, there's TriMet, there's Metro, and then the city provides these specific services. So the Bureau of Transportation, through the Bureau of Transportation, we manage the right-of-way and transportation infrastructure. As you know, as the topic of tonight's conversation, we have public safety services that we provide, including police, fire, 911 call taking, and emergency management. We provide community development services, which includes our permitting function, the planning and sustainability, our Office of Community and Civic Life, our Housing Bureau, as well as a portion of funding that we send to the Joint Office of Homeless Services, which is housed at the county. Our largest service area, which you'll see in the next slide, is actually our public utilities service area, which is comprised of our Bureau of Environmental Services and our Water Bureau. We also provide parks and recreation services through the Portland Parks and Recreation Bureau. And then we have a whole host of sort of back office functions that we provide. All of our city support services, including management and finance, our attorney, our government relations. These are all sort of the things that help us and enable our direct service providers to provide those services to the community. So when you look at the total city budget, we have our adopted budget this year totals $5.6 billion. This is everything. These are all different types of resources. It includes things like reserves, capital funding for long-term projects. When you look at the whole picture and how it's allocated amongst these service areas, this is what you get. So you can see that the biggest budget goes towards public utilities. As I mentioned, this is because those bureaus, the water and environmental service bureaus, have really large long-term capital and infrastructure plans. So they carry balances year over year to help fund these really large long-term plans that they have. Administration and support similarly is where we house a lot of our debt and our financing and our reserves. So it has a lot of these longer term financing plans that are housed there, and that's part of why those are larger pieces of the pie. Typically, I've given this presentation in the past. I've had public safety as a whole broken out as red. I have broken out here the police bureau as sort of a brighter red, so you can specifically see the police bureau's share of that public safety service area. So the darker red are non-police public safety, and the bright red is the police bureau's budget within the total of the entire city budget. So the city's budget is comprised, it can, at its simplest form, can be divided into what we consider dedicated and discretionary money. And so what you see in this chart is that the vast majority of our resources are dedicated to specific services. And so what that means is that when you pay as a Portlander, when you pay for a specific service, say you pay your water, your sewer bill, the city can't take that money and then spend it on whatever they want. They have to take that money that you paid for your sewer and your water services, and they have to spend it on maintaining the sewer and the water systems. So most of our resources, the vast majority of our resources, are things that we collect for a specific purpose, and there are legal restrictions on what we can spend them on. About 10% of the city's budget in that green bar is comprised of what we call general fund discretionary resources, and these have really few restrictions on what we can spend them on. Because there are few restrictions and we have a significant amount of discretion over how those resources are allocated, council discussions tend to focus on this small portion on the budget, on the discretionary allocations. So then when you look at the discretionary budget, which was about $570 million this year, and you look across city services, this is how those discretionary resources are allocated. So again, all of the red comprises the public safety service area, but I've broken out the bright red is the Portland Police Bureau. And then the darker red are other non-police bureau public safety. Again, this is just the discretionary part of the pie, but you can see that picture changes, right, when you look at just discretionary resources. Also, a notable portion of discretionary resources go towards parks and our community development, most notably homeless services in the community development service area. So a little bit about our budget process. We have an annual fiscal year that goes from July to June of every year. And we have an annual,
I'm Nicolette, I'm in 10.
That is our primary budget process throughout the year. It's when we make most of our decisions. Typically, we only have sort of ongoing resources, ongoing general fund resources available during our annual adopted budget. We typically take 6 to 8 months to develop that annual budget. It's a long process. But we also know that the annual budget is a plan. It's our best guess of the roadmap of the year to come. A lot of times we have to make adjustments to that plan due to urgent needs, different changing, evolving needs, situations arise. So we have these structured times during the year when we open up our budget to make adjustments. And these are our supplemental budget processes or our budget monitoring processes, which gets condensed to BMP for bump. So when we talk about the fall bump, the fall supplemental budget, we're talking about is a time where we open our budget up for changes, right? And typically these changes are highly technical in nature. They're truing up budgets between fiscal years. They're making small adjustments on the margins. In the fall, we often do consider and hear requests for general fund resources, but typically the only resource that's available is our general fund contingency, which is pretty small. That being said, this fall is different. So last year, as you all may be aware, we had to dramatically change our revenue forecast as we adapted to the environment under COVID-19. And so what we did at the city budget office is we very quickly, once the pandemic hit, took our best guess and look at what the revenue situation was going to look like, talked with our regional and state partners. And our city economist adjusted our revenue forecast to reflect a $75 million decline in discretionary resource. So in response, we had relatively little time to pivot from what we thought was a surplus environment to a significant deficit. And so the reductions the approach that we took to balance the budget in this environment was that we eliminated sort of the forecasted surplus. Upon reserves and set-asides, we froze spending and tried to collect as much underspending as possible. And then the mayor issued 5.6% cuts to all general fund bureaus. Katie is going to talk after I talk a little bit more about specifically the changes that were made to the police bureau next. So that will be we'll dive more deeply into that in a moment.
Excuse me, Jessica, can we remind people once again to please mute their button if they're not speaking? Thank you.
So, so the decisions that are in front of the council this fall are what is typical for the fall bump process, which are these kind of technical adjustments. They're carryovers from one year to the next, truing up budgets from one year to the next. It is atypical, but this fall council will consider bureau cuts as it relates to that 5.6% cut target that was levied last spring. We essentially rolled out citywide strategies that included a freeze on wages and a freeze on cost of living adjustments for materials and services. And for many bureaus that got them to their target of 5.6%, for a number of bureaus that didn't get them all the way to their target. So those bureaus have to bring back cuts for the fall bump. And so that is a point of discussion for council. There is a discussion, there can be a discussion around the allocation of policy set aside and contingency funds. We anticipate, as we're here tonight, continued policy discussions as related to budget notes, which were notes that were included in the budget around certain policy directives or changes that the council wanted to see. And then, of course, we're always looking in my office to the next budget process. So we're thinking about what's coming next and trying to help the city and council prepare for our next budget process, the annual adopted budget for 21-22, which will occur in a few months' time. So here we are in the middle of the fall bump process with our budget outreach events. The bureaus have submitted their sort of what we say their requested changes to their budget, their requested bump. After in a couple of weeks, our office will issue our reviews and our analysis on changes to bureau budgets. Council will hold a work session on October 20th, and then there will be a hearing on October 28th. This is a list of key links and resources. I will share this presentation with the PCCEP co-chairs, and so you all can have access to it if you'd like to click on any of these resources or links for future information. So with that, I'm not sure if there are questions, and I might actually ask for questions to hold until Katie, unless there are general questions around the budget organization and process, which I'm happy to take. I imagine a lot of questions might be about Police Bureau's budget specifically, and so Katie is going to touch a little bit more on that. Do you have any suggestions, Luckiana, if you want to pause for questions now or want us to proceed?
If there's questions specific to what you just presented, I would be open to taking a few right now, but just also remind folks that as soon as both these presentations finish, there will be a general question period for the overall fall bump before we move into specifically the police budget. So I think we're good to go. I think we're going to the next presentation.
All right, Katie.
Okay, with that, I am going to share a document with all of you. Are you guys able to see that?
Yes.
Great.
Can you zoom in a little bit, Katie?
Sure.
Oh, I don't know if the screen will be.
I'm not sure that's going to work just with the size of it. If that's okay.
I will put also the link to this in the chat so people can follow along if they're on their computers as well as you go through.
So good evening, everybody. As Jessica said, my name is Katy Scheifele. I'm an analyst with the City Budget Office. And this evening, I'm just going to kind of walk us through a summary document that talks about what the Police Bureau's budget looked like in fiscal year 1920 and then throughout the course of fiscal year 2021 budget development. And so just going to kind of start with an overall look at the Police Bureau's fiscal year 1920 adopted budget. And so on the right here, you can see on the revenue side, the majority of the Police Bureau's resources are general fund discretionary resources, which Jessica talked about just a moment ago. In addition to that, they've got several other revenue sources. They've got interagency revenue, which is primarily revenue from fire, police, and disability and retirement. Intergovernmental revenue, which in 1920 was primarily revenues from TriMet for the police participation in the transit police. They've got some beginning fund balance from their police special revenue fund, charges for services. In 1920, they had an alcohol cannabis tax fund, as well as some sort of additional license. On the expense side, you can see that the majority of the Police Bureau's expenses are personnel or staff related. In addition to that, they've got a chunk there of internal materials and services. And so for the Police Bureau, what that means is spending on things like fleet and vehicles or facility services or the technology services that they're buying from other sort of like internal service providers within the city. And then finally, you see their external materials and services. And for the Police Bureau, that means things like large external contracts for services. It could mean things like training expenses, general materials and service expenses of that nature. And so in 1920, the Police Bureau's total adopted budget was $238.2 million, and that's across all funds and all revenue sources. Inclusive of that is $203.8 million in general fund discretionary resources, and then the remainder is what we call non-discretionary resources. And so as we kind of touched on, what that means for the Police Bureau are interagency revenues, intergovernmental revenues, fund balance in the Police Special Revenue Fund, which is typically a large portion of that is related to asset forfeiture, recreational cannabis tax resources, and then some other minor revenue amounts. And so that's what the Police Bureau's budget looked like in fiscal year 1920, just as kind of a starting point before we dive into 2021 budget development. These two charts here just kind of summarize at a very high level what we're about ready to go over in a lot more detail. But it's kind of helpful just to get a summary look at all the different changes, the net changes for the Police Bureau across all the different phases of budget development that happened over the last 5 to 6 months. So the blue line here you can see is the total budget for the Police Bureau. So all revenues, all funding sources, and you can follow it through from base budget to mayor's proposed to approved to the final adopted budget. Similarly, you can see specifically for general fund discretionary, sort of like how this tracks through. And then below there, we had to add sort of like an other budget actions category, because there are a couple of actions that were taken as part of the adopted budget that affected the Police Bureau's budget, but weren't directly budgeted in the Police Bureau's budget. So those just kind of to try to highlight those impacts there. And below that, we've got a chart that sort of shows the FTE changes within the Police Bureau as part of the adopted budget development. And so you can see that within the professional staff or the non-sworn staff of the Police Bureau, the starting point that they had at the beginning of fiscal year 2021 budget development was 305 FTE. And there was the elimination of 4 FTE in the professional staffing group, ending with 301 by the time that we got to the adopted budget. Similarly, with the sworn staffing, you can see that they started with 1,001 FTE, and that throughout the course of budget development, 84 positions were eliminated, leaving them with 917. So that's all just kind of high level summary, and we'll get in kind of the details here in just a second as we go through this. One thing that I did want to spend a little bit of time talking about was base budget development. So each year, the annual budget development process begins with CBO developing current appropriation level targets, or what we call CAL targets, for all general fund bureaus. And that functions as sort of the general fund bureau's base general fund discretionary allocation for the year to come. We develop these CAL targets in order to account for assumed inflationary increases for materials and services spending. We developed them to include the cost of living adjustments and the healthcare increases that went into effect the prior fiscal year, as well as any increases or decreases for other council approved changes that happen throughout budget development. And so beginning at the very base budget for fiscal year 2021, the Police Bureau's general fund base budget was $211.4 million. And we'll kind of just give you guys a look at how we came up with that. So what that means is we look at the prior year's ongoing general fund resources. So for the Police Bureau, the ongoing portion was $203.4 million. We then added to that $5.5 million to account for the prior year cost of living adjustments and the prior year health cost increases. We then take that total and we multiply it by what we call a weighted inflationary factor. And so these inflationary factors are developed by the city economists each year, and they take into account the proportion of each general fund bureau's budget that is going towards personnel versus materials and services, and applies an inflationary factor. And then the last thing that we do is apply any sort of council approved additions or subtractions. And so for the Police Bureau, in the case of 2021 budget development, there was a couple $100,000 that was added to the Police Bureau's budget to account for increased costs that were associated with the Portland Building Reconstruction Project. So all that together gives you a $211.4 million sort of starting point for 2021 budget development, which is important to note just because it's quite a bit higher than the fiscal year 1920 adopted budget. So that overall, the Police Bureau had a $10.1 million increase over the 1920 adopted budget, just as the base budget. And of that 10.1 million, 7.6 million was specifically associated with these general fund discretionary resources, or CAL, that was developed by the city budget office. And then beyond that, there were some increases that netted out to about 2.5 million that were budgeted by the Police Bureau as non-discretionary resource increases over the prior year. And those were, the biggest ones there were for interagency revenue from fire, police, and disability, and then also some intergovernmental revenue. So that's why you see the sort of 10.1 million increase in the base budget over the 1920 adopted budget. And so with that, kind of covering the base budget and our starting point, I'm going to take us into just a discussion of the different changes to the Police Bureau's budget that happened in budget development. And so the first one that we're going to take a look at is the mayor's proposed budget. And so as Jessica mentioned, as a result of an updated forecast showing, $75 million in reduced general fund resources due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the mayor directed the Police Bureau to take an $11.8 million general fund discretionary reduction, which is a 5.6% reduction, which is the same percentage reduction that was applied to all general fund bureaus. For the Police Bureau, in the mayor's proposed, you can see a 5.1 million of that 5.6% reduction that was directly reduced in the Police Bureau's budget as part of the mayor's proposed. And those were reductions associated with furlough, pay freezes, vacancy savings, the removal of inflationary factors for materials and services spending, the elimination of the body-worn camera funding and the associated positions. That's those 4 non-sworn FTE that you saw on the chart at the top, and a couple of smaller items. What you don't see in the Police Bureau's proposed budget is an additional 3.4 million in centrally budgeted general fund resources that were going to be set aside for the Police Bureau's 2021 COLA increases that were eliminated, but you don't see that in the Bureau's budget because it's centrally budgeted. So CBO reduced that, but it wasn't ever in their budget to begin with. In addition to that, there was another 3.3 million in general fund reductions that the mayor's proposed budget directed the Police Bureau to bring forward as part of the fall bump, which is the part of the budget process that we're in right now. But it's not in their adopted budget because at that point in time, they had been directed, but had not yet been realized as part of their budget. Beyond those some more substantive changes, there's a couple technical adjustments that occurred during the mayor's proposed phase affecting non-discretionary resources. The largest of those was a transfer in to the Police Bureau's budget of about $3 million from technology replacement reserves that's intended to fund a records management replacement project. So next up, I'm going to talk about the approved budget changes. During the approved phase, council collectively decided to redirect $1.9 million in discretionary resources from the Police Bureau's budget. Those resources had previously funded a sobering services contract that came to an end. And so instead of being in the Police Bureau's budget, those resources were redirected to a policy set aside for future allocation for either a new sobering services contract or a similar service, but it's no longer in the Police Bureau's budget. Also, as part of the approved budget, council allocated about $300,000 in new discretionary resources to the Police Bureau to cover the costs associated with the ratification of the Portland Police Commanding Officers Association. So the labor agreement within PPB that covers the lieutenants. And then the next series of changes occurred during the adopted budget. And as part of the final adopted budget, City Council voted to further reduce the Police Bureau's budget by $15 million and eliminate 84 sworn positions. In total, it reduced discretionary resources by $8.4 million, and then $6.6 million in non-discretionary resources. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that breaks down. But these are the major amendments that council brought forward and ultimately passed as part of the adopted. One was for the gun violence reduction team, which reduced $5.4 million in discretionary resources and eliminated 38 positions. The next was for the school resource officer program, which eliminated an additional 14 sworn positions and reduced the budget further by $1.9 million in discretionary resources. The special emergency reactions team had an 8 sworn position elimination associated with it, as well as a $1.1 million discretionary reduction. For the transit division, that council amendment eliminated 24 sworn positions that were associated with the transit police unit and eliminated $4.3 million in non-discretionary intergovernmental resources from TriMet that had been funding that work. And then finally, council, as part of the adopted budget, reduced $2.3 million in non-discretionary recreational cannabis tax resources that had been supporting the traffic division. And so this chart is it's a little busy, but it kind of gives you sort of a numerical look at everything that we just walked through. So you can see at the top here, the sort of base requested budget. You can see this familiar $211.4 million in discretionary, the $248.3 million in all revenues, all funds, and then the FTE. And then by each phase of the budget, you can see the adjustment that we've referenced and sort of like the dollar amount and whether or not it's discretionary or whether or not it's in this all funds category. And so what you don't necessarily see in this adopted budget total, as we discussed, is the Police Bureau COLA amount that was centrally reduced, this $3.4 million, and then the fall bump reduction yet to be taken, this $3.3 million that's under discussion as part of the fall bump. And then the last thing that I wanted to touch on was just a conversation about the funding reallocation decisions that council made as part of the adopted budget. So of the $8.4 million in general fund discretionary resources that council reduced from the Police Bureau's budget, they were reallocated like as follows in these bullet points. So $4.8 million was set aside for the Portland Street Response Program. $1 million was set aside for a Black Youth Leadership Development Initiative. $1 million was set aside for a participatory budgeting process with the houseless community. About $70,000 was allocated to the Office of Government Relations to support a tribal liaison position. Roughly $56,000 was allocated to the Office of Equity and Human Rights for a civil rights program position. And then about $1.5 million remains in contingency for future allocation by council. Similarly, with the reduced resources from the recreational cannabis tax fund, council elected to allocate $453,000 of that to Civic Life to bring the total amount for the social equity grants program in Civic Life up to $1 million. And about $1.85 million remains in contingency in the recreational cannabis tax fund for future allocation by council. And so I know that's a lot of information, but it gives you a good summary of sort of, where we started and where we ended up as far as the adopted budget. And then I'm going to stop sharing this document and share a different one with you. Just to kind of tee up sort of the sort of current issues before council, like in the fall bump as they relate to the Police Bureau's budget. So As Jessica mentioned, bureaus have submitted their requested budgets. CBO is in the process of reviewing them right now. And so these are kind of some of the key questions before council right now as they relate to the police bureau's budget. So the first is, as we talked about before, that the bureau was directed to bring $3.3 million in additional reduction options to help with the anticipated budget deficit as part of the fall bump. And so the police bureau has done that. They put forward a $3.3 million reduction option as part of the fall bump. Some of those options include reducing various internal materials and services, reducing funding for major maintenance, as well as a small amount for the records management replacement system. Another question for council right now is whether or not council wants to establish a new community safety transition director position that would be funded by police, fire, PBEM, and BOIC, and that would help shepherd sort of systemic level change and the development of a public safety-wide strategic plan. Another decision before council is whether or not to reallocate the PDD reductions towards reinvestment in other types of services, or whether or not to retain those resources to help with city budget gaps going forward that are anticipated. And so here we're referencing the 1.5 million and the 1.8 million that remain in contingency from reductions made to the police bureau as part of the adopted.
Katie, if I can just jump in real quick and just keep an eye on time. And so if we could maybe wrap it up in the next couple minutes and then allow community questions on this section, please. Yeah,
absolutely. I will be quick. What direction or approach the mayor and council might want to take in addressing the PPB's current year budget deficit? And then finally, whether or not and when to allocate any of the additional resources that are sitting in contingency right now. And with that, I will turn it back over to our co-chairs.
Katie, appreciate that. Jessica as well. Yeah, we want to jump into community questions or comments. I'm really just envisioning this next section, and don't worry, there'll be a second one. So even though this one's a little condensed, just to keep track of the time, we want to open the floor up to community members. This first part is going to be related to the fall bump just in general. So we would prefer your questions or comments be related to that and save one specifically on the police budget to the second part. We are monitoring the chat, but sometimes it's hard to grab those questions. So if you really want your questions to be heard, save them for like right now. So with that, if you guys can just raise your hands using the raise your hand feature, or if you're unable to do that, we'll try and wave you in the best we can. But you can use this time. We're going to do about 1 minute per, 1 to 1.5 minutes per community member, questions or comments. And then after this section, around 6:45-ish, we'll give each of the city council members about 2 minutes to respond on anything that they heard. Yeah, Hun, go ahead.
Yeah, I think first of all, it's a two-part question. Will the adjusted revenue forecast that we have updated now require budget adjustments this fall? And if so, and regardless of if that is required, in May, it was announced that we would do a review of police specialty units so that not only can we review as we're trying to rethink public safety, review what these police specialty units do, but especially in light of if we need to make budget adjustments, I think it's really important that we do that review so that we can really be coherent about the kind of changes that we need to make moving forward.
Yeah, thank you for the, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Lakiana.
Yeah, sorry, we're just gonna keep the questions coming and then we'll, right at the end, let folks, not at the end, but at the end of this section in about 10 minutes, respond to all of these and I'll make sure you have some time in there too, Jessica. Thank you for that question, Hun. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Other folks that have questions that they would like to ask to get in the queue, please either raise your hand. I see Taylor. Yep, go ahead, Taylor.
Hi, so my question is just in regards to the role of this city council and what level of authority, if any, they have over how the Portland Police Bureau spends its budget. I saw that as a part of the 15 million funding decrease, we were able to specifically direct the elimination of certain sub teams within the Bureau. But I'm wondering, does PPB have essentially total discretion to determine where they're putting that total funding that they receive through the city?
Thank you for the question. And just to let folks know too, we do have Assistant Chief Fromm as well as Ken Lee from the Fiscal Department of PPB on the call right now. So we will also give some time to them to respond. Thank you for that question, Taylor. I noticed folks are using the hand clap as the hand raise, but that requires me to actually see your screen. So if you can try and use the actual hand raise, it'll be easier for me to catch everybody's questions. But either way, we'll try and get them in there. Other questions or comments or things that you would like to say regarding the fall bump, regarding how our tax dollars are spent, clarifying questions? This is your time to speak. Yep, go ahead, Angela.
So I was wondering if there will be funding that's consistently going to be added to the Portland Street response each year, since we removed that funding from the police budget this year and just added it or allocated it there. Will there be a consistent budget for the Portland Street response?
Thank you, Angela.
Mm-hmm.
Community time to ask questions on the fall bump, on the process, on the two presentations we just saw from Jessica and Katie. Please raise your hand. Nicolette, go ahead. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Please give me some grace.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was public knowledge. I'd written this in the chat and I was a little more eloquent there. My apologies. I was wondering how much money was spent from other agencies through the Mutual Law Enforcement Assistance Agreement over the course of the summer. And if we can get a breakdown of that by agency, so that would be like OSP, the Sheriff's Department, Vancouver Police Department, and the like as well. And whether or not, and what impact, if any, that has budget-wise with PPB in their endeavors.
Could you repeat that, the funding source you said again? You mentioned some.
Through other agencies, through the law enforcement agreement, agency agreement that PPB has with several police departments and policing or law enforcement agencies across the Portland area and Southwest Washington.
Thank you, Nicolette.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have a few more minutes before I'm going to allow our presenters, City Council, and the Portland Police Bureau to respond to these questions so far. So please raise your hand if you have something else you would like to share, a comment you would like to make, where you would like to see funding going, anything like that. This is the time to share.
Anna, do you want to read one of the some pre-submitted questions for the fall bump?
Yeah, so one of them we got right here. My question is, will there be any consideration of violent responses from the Portland Police Bureau against citizens in the city who are protesting this unequal public justice system when reviewing any budget increases or changes? Do the leaders of this city think that this unrest will go away unless the Portland Police Bureau are held accountable for perpetuating an unjust and unequal public safety system? Do you think the demands from protesters to reinvest resources into local organizations is the right path forward for the city? And I'll just drop that into the chat since we do have the ability to do that for people to visually read that. Yeah, we have time for maybe one more question during this section. Any other questions? Please raise your hand or...
I see Joanna in the chat said she couldn't raise her hand, but maybe Joanna wants to ask her question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I put up a thumbs up because for some reason I can't find the hand raise. Yeah, I understand that the police are spending, the Bureau is really spending at a rapid rate and because of the way they're dealing with the protests, they're busting through their overtime and no doubt many of their material expenses And I'm just wondering what is going to happen and what is the city going to do about this, because they're clearly going to end up in a big hole as far as, you know, and I want to know if there's going to be a move to expand their budget back in the event that they're not going to be able to stay within their budget, and what we can do about that. Maybe one of the things we could do is change the way the police handle protests in the city.
Thank you for that. I'm going to turn it back over to our presenters, and then we will go with City Council, and then we will conclude with PPB for this section to answer any of these questions, to add other thoughts to it, priorities that you're that you direct, that you would like to add to this conversation. Yeah, we'll put that there. So just some of the questions that were asked. How much discretion does PPB have over their budget? How much do they actually control about what spending they have? Will there be consistent direct funding going to the Portland Street response? How much money from the
real quick, I'm going to jump in. It's tough to hear right now, and it's seeming like it's tough for other community members to hear. Your mic is a little bit distorted. It sounds a little bit like a robot, and we don't get to hear your silky smooth voice, which we all need to.
Can you hear me now, or should I switch over?
No, that's still the same problem. I'm sorry, Theo, I didn't mean to step on your toes. I wanted to say, for people who are looking for the way to raise your hands, bottom of the participant box, there's 3 little dots or a raise hands icon, and that's how you can do that.
Additionally, while we're waiting for Lakiana to get situated, I'm going to post some questions from a community member, Susan. They are right there. Oops, those are some. I will post some questions in the chat box that you can all look through. And then for folks answering the questions, you'll have those as a reference.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, we're good. Cool. So sorry about that. Appreciate the patience on that. So I just wanted to read back some of the questions that were said, and then we're going to hear in order from Jessica, Katy, our city council members. I'll call on y'all, and then finally from PPB. Does PPB have discretion in how much in its funding and its budget and how it is spent? Number 2 was, will there be consistent direct funding for the Portland Street response in years to come? How much money was used from the law enforcement agreements with other agencies around the area? Folks, if this question was slightly misstated, you can also drop it back in the chat. And is there a plan to expand the budget if we are not able to stay within the current one? I know, Jessica, you had said you had a couple of things you wanted to add, so I'll open up with you and then we'll go to Katy.
Sure, thank you. And I'll try to be brief, but I was also trying to note other questions as they came through the chat as well. So one of them as well, I think, was, will updated forecast figures result in additional money being cut, and how does that interact? So the updated forecast that we have right now is essentially, the headline is, things are still bad, but they're not quite as bad as we thought. So what that means is that in front of council this fall, they will have the cut packages that bureaus were required to submit. So PPB had a $3.3 million cut target that they had to submit as part of their overall 5.6% target, which was a larger number, but the balance was 3.3 million. They submitted that as part of their budget, as did a handful of other bureaus. Those are the cut packages that are on the table right now. It's not looking like we need to take additional cuts at this point, given our forecast, but those cuts are on the table for discussion for council deliberation. The question on whether the Portland Police Bureau has discretion as to where they put their total budget and money. So budgetarily, the rules that sort of govern how budgets are allocated and who has control and authority over budgets from a Oregon statute and budget law standpoint, the answer is yes. A bureau within their allocated resources can make operational decisions around how they choose to allocate their resources. the way that our government is organized is that each bureau director reports to a commissioner in charge. And so, the guidance is often, there's an interaction there and guidance that occurs with an elected official as it results to that. And then, of course, council's time to deliberate around particularly budget decisions are during our budget processes, and council as a whole can issue direction and directives to bureaus as well. But operationally, it goes down to the bureau level, and then commissioner in charge, and then all of council can weigh in during various times where they can legislate and they can issue directives. The Portland Street response, yes, the amount that was of funding that was reallocated as the Portland Police Bureau reductions were made. There was, I think, $4.8 million that was reallocated and earmarked for Portland Street response, and that was an ongoing general fund allocation. So that will remain an ongoing general fund allocation unless council votes to change it, and that will increase every year. By the same inflationary factors that Katy described had occurred to the police bureau. Let's see.
And just also want to be aware just of time. We want to try and keep it at 2 minutes per person, but I know you got a lot of questions. So why don't you finish up with this next one?
Right. I will finish with the overtime question. I think that's probably a big one. So there's, again, this question can be answered a couple of different ways. I will say budgetarily, the rules around what is allowed budgetarily and what the options are in front of council budgetarily are as follows. So when a bureau looks like it's going to overspend its budget, council can authorize additional funding, can allocate additional funding for them. At this point in the fiscal year, it's pretty early in the fiscal year to make that sort of decision. However, given the cuts that have been levied on the Portland Police Bureau, they have limited flexibility and they have limited capacity to really absorb additional cost overruns. So that's part of the equation as well. So council can choose to authorize additional funding for the Bureau. They can choose to direct the Bureau to try to absorb it. However, whatever that means operationally for them, which may have some consequences, or they may choose to set aside funding and sort of hold on to that funding in sort of a central contingency, not allocate it yet, but have it earmarked for them in case they need it later in the fiscal year. So those are the options budgetarily. That's what I got.
Thank you, Jessica. Katy?
Oh, I tried to cover the answers on behalf of our office.
Perfect. Okay, awesome. I'm going to turn it over then to Mayor Wheeler for a couple minutes of responses, and then just also be aware that there will be a second section for City Council to respond again at the end. So don't feel like you have to get everything in right now. But Mayor Wheeler, please go ahead, and again, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, so I'll give my take on a couple of those questions. First of all, does PPB have the discretion? You heard the legal answer, which is probably closer to the truth, but the City Council actually expects that if we direct either funding into a program or funding out of a program, that directive is adhered to. That would be my expectation, and my suspicion is when my colleagues talk, they're going to say the same thing. With regard to the Portland Street response, there is a lot of enthusiasm on the council for the Portland Street response. That's an area where I will definitely fight hard to continue to support on an ongoing basis. Look, we're spending a lot of money right now to try and get that program stood up, do the trial. We're running it out with 2 teams right now. So we're actually making a big commitment just to do the trial. And it's my expectation, based on the success of similar models in other places like Eugene, that this is a program we're going to want to continue to fund in the years ahead. Plans to expand, I was looking in the chat. I don't think this is the year where you're going to see any additional resources going into the Portland Police Bureau budget. You saw that in the proposed, there was a significant reduction. When we put the adopted together, we added to that reduction. There's still a gap in the Portland Police Bureau budget, and that's despite the fact that both the sworn and the non-sworn members of that bureau also agreed to freezes to expected benefit increases. But I don't think you're going to see any increases in funding. The one area where you might see increased spending around public safety, and I would support this, Commissioner Hardesty, between the two of us, we actually collectively are the commissioners in charge of all of the public safety bureaus. So that's police, fire, Bureau of Emergency Communications, the Bureau of Emergency Management, and whatever I'm forgetting inadvertently. But the bottom line is those bureaus could be more effectively and strategically administered if they combined resources around budgeting, around back office administration, around IT and technology infrastructure. And so we are in the process of bringing together a collective effort under one unified leader to help us be more effective and frankly accountable in terms of how those dollars are spent. It's going to require some additional resource to make that happen. But I'll defer to Jessica as whether that actually goes in through the police budget. It's probably just a unified allocation from each of the public safety bureaus to support that. And I think that's pretty much it. There was one other nuance. Han had asked the question up front, where are we in terms of reductions, increases, whatever. Jessica said it's bad, but it's not as bad as we expected. So there's about a $5 million cushion. That does not leave a lot of discretion. An area I'm really interested in is focusing on reducing the number of people on our streets. So I may make a small allocation request to the city council there, but we've not discussed that yet as a council. And we also know that in future years, we're going to have to absorb additional costs. So all of the, I directed for non-sworn employees that they take a COLA and a step increase freeze during the proposed budget. We then negotiated with our labor partners on further freezes and reductions for our represented employees, but those were one-year agreements. And so unless those agreements continue or roll over into an additional budget year, the fact is we're going to have to cover those increases in future budget years. So some of the $5 million additional that's on the table now may in fact be held in reserve for future years. But again, that's a conversation that we need to have as a council.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to turn it over next to Commissioner Amanda Fritz. Commissioner Fritz, you there? We will come back to her and go next to Commissioner Chloe Udaly. Oh, there's Commissioner Fritz.
Yeah, sorry, I'm technologically challenged, like I've heard some of you are. So I actually really want to reserve the time for community members to have their comments and questions. So I'll reserve mine for later. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll go next to Commissioner Udaly.
Thank you. Like Commissioner Fritz, I'm really here to listen, and I want to maximize the time we have for community members. I've got a closing statement, but otherwise I'm going to continue listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Hardesty.
I just want to thank the 90-some people that took time tonight when they could have been somewhere else to be here. And I look forward to us continuing the conversation and dialogue. Thank you.
Last, we have our newest commissioner, Commissioner Ryan.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. This is well run. I want to keep listening, and I will have some comments after I take it all in at the end. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll go next with Assistant Chief Fromm and PPB.
Good evening. Mike Fromm, I'm the Assistant Chief for the Services Branch, so I oversee Business Services Group, which prepared a lot of our budget materials. I'll just try to go through and keep track of the questions that I've seen in chat and have written down in other places. Susan, you asked a series of questions about how the Police Bureau is adapting to City Council resolutions. What I will say is that these budget documents that we're talking about tonight don't reflect any of that because they were prepared before the resolutions. The Police Bureau is in the process of ensuring that we do adapt to these and that they will be in everything that we put out moving forward, especially in the areas of anti-racism and fiscal responsibility. One of the reasons we're here tonight is the need for us to become fiscally responsible in the budget situation that we're in. In what way have we furthered our progress to complete the U.S. DOJ settlement agreement? I would refer that to the Compliance Officer Community Liaison, which you'll hear is the COCL. You can find their latest reports on their website. And then in what other ways does the PPP measure itself worthy of ongoing funding? Quite honestly, we would fall back on calls for service and just the overall amount of work that we do in response to citizens in Portland calling and asking us to provide them help. There's a question in here about 48 retirements and overtime. Overtime is not used in calculating a person's retirement payoff. So overtime would not actually increase their long-term payouts. However, you do mention the 27 pay period calculation. This is true under the way that FPDNR currently calculates pensions. It is possible for officers to retire during a year where there were 27 instead of 26 pay periods because we are paid every 2 weeks instead of bi-monthly. That does have a long-term impact in total FPDNR payouts, but it doesn't actually affect the general fund right now so much as it increases property taxes because that's where FPDNR would be getting their money to pay those retirees. I do not have an exact number of what we have spent on less lethal munitions during the protests. I simply don't. That is something that I believe we're working on putting out on GovQA, which is a public record site. So we should have that out pretty shortly. There's a question about the criminal intelligence unit. Where is the spending? Where's the funding from that? In this budget document, the criminal intelligence unit is located within the chief's office. It did not have its own program offering. It is currently 7 full-time employees. There's 5 officers, a sergeant, and a civilian non-sworn staff. I think their total cost to us is about, Ken Lee is here, I want to say it's in the $800,000 range is where we're at with that. If you want to learn more about what criminal intelligence unit does, I will refer you to our website. They have their own location under divisions in Portland Police Bureau. And in terms of why are they not doing investigating the far right, I would again say, yes, they do investigations as long as there is a criminal nexus to something that they can actually do an investigation on. In the chat, I will point out an article that was in the Willamette Week that is based upon a criminal intelligence unit investigation into a far right extremist. I'm sure I'm missing something.
One more question, Chief, and then we'll get into our next section and there'll be more time to answer questions at the end.
All right. Mr. Drury, is there something that you see that jumps out that you think we should hit more than others?
No, I'll leave it to your discretion. There's been so many that it's honestly hard to keep track of, but if there's something in there that you felt would be good for the final one, I'll leave that to you.
There's all good questions. I mean, I see some things in here about cleaning up of toxic chemicals. This is going to be in relation to CS gas. Honestly, that is not a topic of conversation that I believe that we have had at this point. And if there does need to be cleanups, it's probably going to be at the direction of the state agency that was investigating whether or not there was some sort of a toxic situation that we had to remediate.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. And again, we'll call you back up towards the end of the meeting to make some final comments. I do also want to say, Mayor, I hope I'm not springing this on you, but PCCEP did decide we wanted to have some comment on the deputization of Portland Police Bureau officers. If you could just keep that in mind at the end of the call. I know there's been questions on it from a lot of folks, and as that is something that we deal with community relations, we felt important, while it's not necessarily related to the budget process, that it was something we wanted to leave some space for to comment on at the end of the meeting.
I'm happy to.
Okay, appreciate that. I'm going to turn over to my co-chair, Elliot Young, to take over the second half of the meeting.
Thanks, Lakiana. So in the second part, I mean, these parts blend into one another, but the idea is move on from the fall bump to maybe more general questions. And we did receive a bunch of questions ahead of time to give the city officials time to prepare answers. So I'm going to just drop all of these in the, well, I'll see if I could get it to work to drop them in the chat. But I don't think I could drop so many at once. Anyway, I will do them one at a time then. And in this section, this is a question about how much does policing protest cost? And so there are a bunch of general questions, but we do have some people with hands up. So I want to call on those people, and then I'll be referring back to these specific questions. So next up is Jake, Doctor. Jake, are you there? Okay, we will come back to Jake. Young.
Hi, I'm here, sorry.
Oh, Jake, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, hi. Thanks so much for hosting this meeting. I had a question that I posted in the chat that I think Mr. Drury asked to refer to the end about funding for federal police being deputized. I'd also like to ask if we could discuss if the mayor has banned CS gas, has those sorts of costs been removed from the budget? And have we increased budgets for the remediation and cleanup of the toxic and chemical waste that is poisoning our parks, and that we're seeing includes poisonous levels of zinc chloride, lead, and hexavalent chromium. The federal police dispatched so much zinc chloride in Portland that it could have potentially killed, if that amount of chemicals was exposed to a person, it was enough in their HC gas to kill 295 people. So we're wondering what the cleanup is. So far, Portland Bureau of Transportation, and I'd love to know Chloe Udaley's thoughts, are just street sweeping, which is technically a violation of state laws on toxic waste cleanup. So kind of a big question, but number one, why are we still paying for chemical weapons? Two, what are we doing to pay for the remediation of those?
Thank you. And in relation to that question, to the budget, someone asked me whether, since the officers are being deputized, whether we're still paying for them. I imagine the answer is yes, but I thought I would put that out there. Young, you're up next.
Thanks. So my question is about, my understanding about settlements is that it's charged through internal materials and services, and it's prorated where each bureau, and especially the police that has such a big bill for settlements, pays for it like for 5 years. And we know that already there are settlements that are unclosed. So there's still settlement from the man who was shot through his helmet with a munitions weapon on August 4th, 2018. And that case is not settled. There's also an upcoming settlement of a killing that's going to be over $1 million if you count the legal fees. But anyway, considering that since in the last 4 months alone, we have 52 new claims for tort claims, that this is going to put a huge stress on the future of our budget. And I want to be clear that in no way should we reduce our payments to the victims and survivors. They deserve every single penny they can win considering the harm that was done. But in terms of risk management, right, we're supposed to see those kinds of risks and change the behavior of employees to avoid those kinds of costs in the future. And so OMF and risk management is not in the position to command the police, but as Commissioner, Mayor, what have you been doing and what are you planning on doing to change the behavior of the police so that we do not get in a position like cities like Chicago that have had to borrow hundreds of millions of dollars to pay these costly settlements that end up doubling the amount that they owe? So to be fiscally conservative, we need to make sure that cops stop the harm.
Thank you, Hyung. Next up is Allison Cole.
Thank you. My question is about seeing the police budget itself once the appropriation has been made to the Bureau. How can an average citizen see the final spending sheets, basically, that the department has spent? My understanding is that it's only through public records requests. I'm wondering if there's a way that average citizens can view the entire spending for the year once it's completed. And my next question is, are there parts of the budget that are never publicly available? Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that gets to the criminal intelligence unit question that Hyung had posted, and I just put into the chat, which is a more detailed question about sort of parts of the budget which seem opaque or are opaque to the general public and how to get access to those. Are there any other members of the PCCEP or the public who have questions? Please raise your hand. There is a question which came in ahead of time while people come up with their questions about the police contract. And this question said, could you tell me when the city's police contract is up for negotiation? Does the city allow for public review of these negotiations? If not, why? The citizens of the city have made it clear we want to change our police system, and starting with a contract that protects rights for everyone, not police officers, is what we will demand. So that's one question. I don't see any hands raised right now. I'm just trying to make sure that all of the questions.
Taylor here.
You see one?
Taylor is trying to raise her hand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the answer I got to my first question, and it led to a follow-up. So, Mayor Wheeler, I heard you saying that any directive issued by yourself or by the city council to the PPB, you would expect it to be adhered to. And that made me wonder, is there a legal basis for the authority of the council to issue a directive? And are there legal parameters on the content of a directive? Or is this something that is more kind of just like accepted, but not necessarily codified into law?
Okay, let's see if there aren't any other questions. We could turn to council members to respond to what we have so far, because I think there are a bunch on the list. So I'm going to just see if any either PCCEP members or other folks in the community have any specific questions. Okay, seeing none, let me turn it over to the mayor, since I think some of those questions were directed at you.
Yeah, first of all, Jake raised, and you'd also asked about my position with regard to the deputization of our police bureau as federal officers. This afternoon, I formally requested that the U.S. attorney withdraw that designation. And I have also simultaneously withdrawn the city's consent for that deputization. I've had conversations with others in law enforcement, including the district attorney. The district attorney made it very clear that he will prosecute cases of assault on a police officer. So there's no justification, in my opinion, for the continuity of that deputization. Moreover, in conversations with the state police and other affiliated law enforcement agencies that were involved in this weekend's activities, everybody was under the assumption, or at least the state police, and I believe the leadership of the Portland Police Bureau were under the assumption that that deputization was only for the duration of the declared emergency, as declared by the governor. With regard to the ban of CS gas and will there be a budgetary savings there, I don't honestly know the answer to that question, and maybe one of the folks from PPB can answer that question. But logically, yeah, it would seem that way to me. That is my intention, that be a permanent ban on the use of CS gas. And therefore, I would expect we will not be spending any more money on it. Jake had asked the question about cleanup from the use of CS gas, whether it was Portland Police Bureau or the feds or the county or the state police, all of whom use the CS gas. We have directed that the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability do an environmental analysis. It's my understanding that that analysis is either close to complete or has been completed. And when that is completed, the information, the data will be shared with the public. The question was, can we change behavior of the police? And I'm sorry, I forgot who asked that question specifically. The answer is yes, we can. We can do it through directive. We can do it through the council coming to agreement on the specific ways we want to budget and allocate resources. We can do it in terms of who we are hiring and what training practices we are holding those hires to. Early in my administration, directed implicit bias training for all officers coming in. We now have a duty to respond or a duty to intervene that was just acted. So yeah, there are definitely things we can do to change behavior. Also, the creation of this committee, the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing. It's independent. They can raise whatever issues they want. They make recommendations to me and to the city council. They're smart people, they're engaged, they're trusted in the community, and they can absolutely make those decisions. Taylor asked a question that's really interesting to me, and I can't answer it. So I'm hoping we have one of our attorneys on the phone. Her question was, or Taylor's question was some variety of the legality of council directives. Is that just done by tradition, or is that a formal legal response? I know that as the commissioner in charge.
Fuck you, Ted Wheeler, quit your job.
I know that as the police commissioner, when I issue a directive, it obviously has full force and effect by virtue of the fact that it's chain of command. I'm not as confident about council directives, but I think it's a really fair question. It's one I'd like to know the answer to as well.
Real quick, I apologize for that, Mayor Wheeler.
You don't need to apologize for that, and I'm plenty used to it, so don't worry about it.
Well, that person is gone, and if that happens,
I'm sure they are.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Just one follow-up on the deputization. Can the Portland Police be federally deputized without the consent of the city? Oh, I think Mayor Wheeler might.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Multitasking. Could you ask the question again, Elliot?
Sure. Can the feds deputize the Portland Police without our consent?
No, I don't believe they can.
So once you withdraw the consent, then you believe that that'll end?
Yeah, but I'm just making absolutely sure. So we've asked them to withdraw the consent, and I've withdrawn the consent on behalf of the PPB. So I'm just covering all my bases.
Okay, thank you. So there are some community members but Amanda, Commissioner Fritz has had her hand raised. So please, Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you. I just put in the chat a link to the report on the CS gas cleanup that the Bureau of Environment, the BES, that which the mayor passed to me. It's about the same time that the report came out. They have done storm drain cleanup, and so the contamination levels didn't reach the river and are now being cleaned up, except for the one that's still got the federal fence around it.
Thank you, Commissioner Fritz. Commissioner Udaley.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Fritz. I did want to just address the one specific question that was asked to me about cleanup. This is the first time that concern has been raised with me. Unfortunately, PBOT staff are not available to me after 7 o'clock at night, but I'd be happy to get back to you if you want to stick your contact info in the chat. And I'll just say that I called for a ban on tear gas days after these protests began. We are all very concerned about both the known and unknown health impacts of this gas to protesters and local residents, as well as to our environment. And there was a question in the chat that I saw about banning munitions. And Commissioner Hardesty and I have been working on a munitions restrictions ordinance. It has turned out to be much more challenging than anticipated because of the way our DOJ settlement restricts certain changes that we can make at this time. I'm not going to go into it much further right now, but I think this is an issue we'll address and explain soon. We share your frustrations. Sometimes we cannot instantly achieve what we would like to due to the constraints put upon us by forces beyond our control. In this case, it's the Department of Justice.
Thank you, Commissioner Daly. So Timur, you indicated to me that you wanted to ask a question.
Hi, mine's a comment. Is that okay?
Sure.
Sure. On September 5th, police indiscriminately gassed our neighborhood. My neighbor is asthmatic and pregnant, and they said this was the straw that broke the camel's back, and they decided to move to a different city. I pleaded with the police officers for 2 hours not to gas our neighborhood. When a Black neighbor of mine came out and he actually had tear gas enter into his home with his 13-year-old son, he was having a conversation with the police about tear gas entering his house. The police officer was listening to him. At that point, another police officer came and assaulted him in the head with a baton. Where would we go if tear gas got into our house? Where would I get a gas mask for a 2-month-old child? Would potentially lifelong effects of tear gas be worth it? All because someone threw a firework at police a half-mile away 2.5 hours earlier. Where would I go with police on both sides of my house, thinking anyone near them was out to attack them? All the people I spoke to felt the police response in this neighborhood was overbearing. My 2 kids were asleep. If they were awake, they would have seen their grandma traumatized in absolute horror of how her tax dollars were used. Portlanders are not violent people, and they believe in equal rights. And to see this sort of police response is really frustrating. There were over 85 individuals acting under their city's legal authority to use force that night. At least 12 tear gas canisters were deployed in a crowd of hundreds. You had city employees on city time turning city streets into a scene out of the Middle East, a Middle East that my family gave everything to immigrate from. I've spent time in Turkey. I know what it's like when the government tries to chill speech. September 5th in Ventura Park was that. I'm appalled at the systems that allowed this to happen. The trust between our family and the Portland police was irrevocably broken that night. City Council, if you wouldn't allow a sewer overflow once a week in a different neighborhood, why would you allow a different city bureau to turn a neighborhood into a war zone in a different week? Is this how we're just spending our discretionary general fund dollars? I guess my point in this comment is basically say police violence is a public health crisis. It affects everyone's emotional, mental, and physical health, even the people who are not on the streets. This is a quality of life issue affecting entire neighborhoods. And I would basically, my plea to council would be this current approach of taking a hands-off approach on police tactics and deferring to incident commanders clearly is not working. These neighborhoods are really being affected by what's going on, and police are trying to paint the narrative that we're on the side of the police, and that's simply not true. These people are marching for civil rights, and regular Portlanders are support that message. And so it's affecting all of us. And I just wanted this lack of strategy on police tactics, I think, has risen to a level that council really needs to be involved, and it's no longer okay to defer to one commissioner. And I'm on the Multnomah County Public Health Advisory Board, and numerous board members have pleaded with the county public health director to exercise her police powers in the midst of a pandemic to address police violence as a public health crisis. So I'll pause there. I appreciate you taking my comments.
Thanks, Timur. I don't see any other hands raised, so maybe this would be a good time for commissioners to address that. There was also another comment related to this in the budget about investigations into allegations of police brutality. And we've gotten a lot of these on PCCEP. The perception from the community is that none of the officers from the beginning of these protests has yet been disciplined. And we know now that the costs of policing are at least $8 million, at least according to the report I saw today. So that sort of links the budget thing, but would any of the commissioners like to respond to Timur's comment, which is not directly on the budget, but I think implicates the budget more broadly?
I guess I will start by just saying that I've seen the videos. I've seen the videos of neighborhoods just being brutalized. I've seen the videos of police using batons and beating people over the head with batons. I have conversations regularly with both Chief Lavelle and with Mayor Wheeler, and it is not okay. And it seems counterintuitive that when people are standing up against police brutality all over the world, that the response to that should not be enhanced police brutality. Clearly, as a community, we have to decide how we want to be policed, and we must remind police that they are public servants, and they are given the impression that they don't answer to anyone, and I absolutely firmly disagree. They do answer to us, the taxpayers, the public. There's no public servant above scrutiny, and this has been an ongoing issue, and it's going to take all of us. It's going to take all of us to rethink what Portland looks like, what the role of police is, and what their role should be in a community safety plan. So, and we're working on it, right? I mean, I'm personally working on it. I know the mayor's working on it. I know other members of the council are working on it. But we also have to be very intentional because, again, it's not just about cutting the police budget. It's about the vision of where we're headed. And if we don't know where we're headed, then all we're in is a defensive mode. And so the budget process is a fabulous place to weigh in. The Rethink Portland meetings that are happening all over the city are a great place to weigh in. It is important that we have as many Portlanders as possible telling us how you want to be policed and what your idea of community safety is. None of us on the city council can unsee some of the brutality that's happened. And from the beginning, we're in a pandemic still. We're still in phase 1 of a pandemic. And we had the feds just use the oldest tear gas that they could find and brutalize people. And then Portland Police was doing it before the feds came, and then Portland Police did it after the feds came. So the fact that that one piece has been removed from their list, I know. You're on mute, and I still know what you're saying. I'm telling you that we, as the council, have been supporting the mayor and saying no to that. Commissioner Udaley and I are working on a munitions ban, but it will have to be in 2 parts because we are still under the settlement agreement, but that's only going to be in effect until February. And so that's why now we're planning how we continue to move forward. So I just want to say it breaks my heart every time I look at the videos. And you're absolutely right when you see the police narrative of we were attacked, so therefore we had to go out and attack people. And then you look at the video that's from every other media outlet and communities when you see the live stream. It is really frustrating when that happens. But again, it's going to take all of us, and it's going to take sustained pressure because in my mind, Portland Police still haven't gotten it. The public has been very clear that they want radical transformation. And what Portland Police is doing is still making excuses for their unwillingness to hear the public's voice. So we got a lot of work to do, but we're in it. We're in it 100%. Thank you.
So Commissioner Hardesty, could I just follow up on that? I think what I hear from in the chat and from Timur is what can the city council, if anything, do now? Because long-term re-envisioning is going to be a long-term strategy. Is there anything to hold the police accountable for these actions now if the IPR is not working?
I am going to continue. As you know, I led the council to unanimously send a true community oversight board to the ballot. You, the public, will have an opportunity on November 3rd to vote on that. But again, that's one piece. We have the fall coming up, and you have an opportunity to weigh in on how we spend those dollars. And with all due respect to my colleagues who say that's not what we do at this time, we are in radically different times than any of us have ever experienced before. And that takes radically courageous leadership to do things that we haven't done in the past. But again, it's going to take all of us to figure out how that happens. And so I'm not saying wait 10 years and we'll have it fixed. I'm telling you that every step of the way, every decision the council makes, you have an obligation to hold us accountable to make sure we're moving in the direction. Now, we may not agree on what the solution is, but if we're moving in the direction of reimagining, reinvesting, and making sure that we're demilitarizing our law enforcement, that's key. But then the other stuff is we gotta change the psychologist. We need a multiracial psychologist pool that decides who's eligible to be a community police officer. We've got to change who we recruit. We should be recruiting our kids who are in high school and starting there, getting them prepared to serve their community. We got to change how we train police, right? We have to have community and police partners in training police, right? So there's a lot of work to do and a lot of work for all of us. So just pick a lane and help.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty. There's a request. I see, Commissioner Fritz, you have your hand raised, but there's a request for the mayor to respond since I guess this is more directly under his purview. So, Mayor, would you like to respond?
I don't think it's appropriate to use CS gas in a residential neighborhood. That's one of the reasons I banned its use.
Okay. I guess the other question, which I'd ask Commissioner Hardesty, you as police commissioner, is there any powers that you have as police commissioner to hold accountable officers for which there are videos showing what appears to be misconduct and brutality?
Yeah, it's limited, to be honest. Thanks for asking the question. Past city councils, not this one, have ceded authority that they originally have, and which is clearly intended in the city charter around citizen oversight and citizen review. They have ceded that authority to the Portland Police Association through the collective bargaining process. As the mayor, as the police commissioner, and the police chief, we don't get the final say on whether or not somebody is terminated or not terminated. That goes to arbitration. The arbitrator gets to decide. Some guy named Joe, who's an arbitrator, not an elected official, decides whether or not somebody can stay or go. And virtually every mayor at some point or other tries to fire somebody, tries to terminate somebody, and that individual is brought back onto active duty by an arbitrator. That's one of the reasons that the city council has referred to the November ballot. I hope everybody supports it, a measure that will fundamentally overhaul the oversight and accountability mechanism for policing. That's why we've supported legislation down in Salem that would do the same thing. But there are things we can do. There were a couple of cases recently where officers were seen on videos doing things that certainly warranted an investigation, and they're entitled to their full investigation and due process under the labor agreements that currently exist and under Oregon labor law. In the meanwhile, though, we can take people off of the streets, and I've done that in several occasions, including recently. Elliot, you're muted.
Sorry. Commissioner Fritz, you're next up.
Thank you. I was going to make a couple of the same points. The question was asked by Timur, why have no police officer has been held accountable, it routinely takes 18 months to even get a decision out of the independent police review. And that's one of the reasons that the whole council supported Commissioner Hardesty in referring the ballot measure. Oh, by the way, I can't talk very well. I spent 2 hours in the dentist chair immediately before coming here, so I apologize if I sound a bit garbled and that I was late. This is really important, so I'm going to mutter my way through it. So, you know, I've been on the council now for 12 years, and the contract was abhorrent when I got here, and it's not really changed all that much. You'll all recall that we spent huge amounts of money in 2016 to get rid of the so-called 48-hour rule and to enact a discipline guide. And I do not believe that either of those things has made a whole lot of difference. It was mentioned earlier that about the pension rule, about the 27 paychecks. Commissioner Saltzman passed a charter change to say that no, actually there are 52 weeks in a year and a pension should be based on 52 weeks, not 54 weeks. It was overwhelmingly approved by the voters. It was then submitted to arbitration by all three unions, the police, fire, and police commanding officers, and the arbitrator overturned it. So a ballot measure that was supposed to save us, the taxpayers, $50 million only ended up saving $10 million because it cost $40 million for that 27 paycheck rule. So it's possible that and hopeful that the voters will pass the charter change in November, and I hope we do. It will also then undoubtedly be grieved. And so one of the things that we have to deal with is that state law affords such great deference to unions and contract law, and it's no coincidence that contract law was set up for people who have property and for specifically white men. So although I'm still a union member with the Oregon Nurses Association, I believe there is a responsibility of particularly public employee unions to work for the public good as well as for their members, and that shouldn't be in conflict. That what's good for the public should be good for the members, and they should embrace that. So those are some of the challenges that we're embracing. I encourage everybody to watch a training that the City Council and all the Bureau directors engaged in this morning with the Western States Center regarding white supremacy and systemic racism. And there's a second part of it on October 6th that the public is welcome to observe as well regarding the Police Bureau in particular. I found their information and the facts that they shared, the perspective that they gave, really helpful in guiding us into how to move forward, given that there's so many people who care so much about these issues, and that the council as a whole is committed to true community safety and to moving forward in a way that provides every member of the community the safety of knowing that they can be in their home, be on the street, be themselves any time of the day or night.
Thank you, Commissioner Commissioner Fritz. I had a follow-up question. You were, of course, on the council when the last union contract was approved, and I guess it would be helpful for the public to understand why it's so hard for the council to actually negotiate a contract that represents the values of the city, or even the commissioners who seem to be voting to approve it. There seems to be a disconnect with everyone saying they don't like the contract, and yet the city commissioners in the past have approved those contracts.
Because that's what contract law says. The contract law says you have to base it on the previous contract. So even to get a change like getting rid of the 48-hour rule, we had to pay millions of dollars in increase in raises for the police in order to get that. So, and then the 2016 council was roundly panned for giving raises, even though we were trying to get unarmed officers to be part of the community safety program and the discipline guide and the getting rid of the 48-hour rules, but it's based on the contract, and so you can't just say, well, we don't like the contract, we're going to start over. That's not how state and federal contract law works, and so we need to work with our state legislators to do what they can to change that, and that has been historically really difficult because many of them are funded by police and fire unions in their election campaigns. And so that's one of the reasons we have open and accountable elections, so that you can be sure that moving forward on the Portland City Council, people who are elected will not be beholden to unions with large pockets, because that's not what we do in Portland anymore.
Okay, thank you.
I also wanted to add, the police union is a very unique animal. The police are the only public servants that have life and death decision-making power. And they have an enormous amount of insanity built into their contract. I mean, one of the rules that still tickle me is one that says the city council is prohibited from saying anything that may embarrass an individual officer. There's 900 officers. How do I know what embarrasses each and every one of them, right? But no other union has that component in their contract. Why is that, right? And so, as the mayor said, this is a historic document that gets built on every contract talk. But here's what's unique about the current contract talks. The entire city council has been engaged in both hiring an outside attorney to be the lead negotiator, because I've actually sat in on a couple of Portland police contract negotiations, and it was not a fair fight. And so we hired an outside attorney. We set aside $500,000 so that we had a professional who was an expert at police union contracts. And so that's has never happened before, right? Normally it is the police commissioner that's actually leading the effort around the police contract. But all 5 of us, Nick Fish was also involved in that before he passed. So there's a commitment that I have not seen, because I've been advocating for 30 years outside of City Hall. And I can tell you, I have not seen the kind of commitment to make sure contracts are open to the public, those that are in public buildings. We can't make the union open their office, but every other one the public will be able to sit in the room, assuming that we have COVID under control by then. Otherwise, there'll be a virtual something. But anyway, this is a new time, right? And this was before COVID hit. So the council already came into this talks knowing that we had to do things radically different. And we are poised to do that in January when the contract talks start again.
So how would you respond to Commissioner Fritz's point or argument that because it's based on the previous contract that it's very hard to make changes?
Well, I mean, there are things that we must make in order to make the ballot measure work. Like we have to strengthen the arbitration law to ensure that a community oversight board's decision is final. And so it would never go to arbitration. And we have the People of Color Caucus in Salem as having that as a priority on the next legislative agenda, whether that's after the elections or whether it's January. That will take place the next time the legislature convenes. In addition, of course, the contract talks start again in January. And so we have an outside attorney who knows what we need when we go in to negotiate that contract. I think with the voters overwhelmingly supporting our ballot measure and the legislature making that change to arbitration, the city goes in a much stronger position than we did January of last year.
Thank you for that information and perspective. Commissioner Udaley?
Thank you. I've been pouring through the chat and just trying to pick out a few comments and questions that haven't been addressed. First, I want to acknowledge the grief and the rage and the frustration that I'm seeing in the community and in these comments, and assure you that I and my colleagues share many of your concerns and your frustrations. You have heard that past councils have bargained away so much of our power to the union. You've heard that some of what we want to do is outside our jurisdiction. It's going to require changes of the state law, even changes to the state constitution. It's going to require us getting out of the DOJ settlement. I know, I want to assure you that this council has made greater strides towards true transformation of the system than any council in my memory and possibly in the history of the city. and we are poised to do so much more. What I know you don't want to hear is that this is going to be a process, and it's going to be a lengthy process. We didn't get here overnight, and it's going to take months and years to accomplish what we are beginning to do today. I want to dispel a couple misunderstandings about police. We extended that contract because we couldn't do the kind of community engagement and involvement we wanted to with the bargaining of the new contract. It was never an option not to extend it. And there may be hopefully a city attorney here that can explain it better than I can, but these are these are protected positions. If we simply refused to extend the contract, my understanding is it would revert to the prior contract. We would have lost all the savings that we made with the union agreeing to furloughs and pay freezes and COLA freezes, things like that. And they would bring unfair bargaining practice grievance. I may not be using the exact technical term, but they would bring grievances against the city. So that was never an option, as much as some people want to think it was. It's also not the case that the police bureau is going to just run out of money one day and we won't have police anymore. I am resisting the assertion from the bureau that we need to give them more money to pay for overtime. I want to see them find that money in their existing budget, and I believe Commissioner Hardesty does as well. It was actually her idea, but I absolutely support that. So, yeah, like I said, it's an ongoing conversation. Multiple jurisdictions and agencies hold pieces of the power. It is going to take months and years of advocacy, both outside and inside City Hall. I finally just want to say I absolutely share your frustrations, concerns, and anger about the protest response. It's been absolutely terrifying to witness. I have been engaged in protest and activism in the city for 30 years now, and I've certainly witnessed police excessive use of force and brutality, and I have friends who have sued and won judgments against the police bureau. I've never seen anything like this. We have officers acting as though that they are above the law and they are beyond reproach, and they're not. And the paternalistic, punitive, abusive gaslighting that we're getting from these officers and the bureau is, if anyone was watching me, like, I've been in tears tonight. This is outrageous and beyond frustrating that we seem to not be able to rein this bureau in. And they're refusing to hold themselves accountable, refusing to acknowledge the harm that they've done and they continue to do. So I will just end by saying, I know that there is a lot of skepticism and mistrust in the community. I know that I didn't tell you what you want to hear tonight as far as the speed with which we're going to be able to accomplish various demands coming from the community, but you really do have a council that is committed to this work, and we need the community to work with us to make real progress in the coming months and years. So I just want to thank every single person who's been out there, and I want to extend my empathy and apology for what has been done to you by our police bureau, whether you're protesting in the streets or random passerby or you're inside your homes. It's it's horrifying and it's unacceptable.
Thank you, Commissioner Guidilli. I just want to follow up on a couple of points that you made. I think all of the commissioners have talked about the obstacles in the way to making change, the contract, the people in the state legislature, et cetera, the laws. One of the arguments that people pushing for defunding make is that the one power that you do have is the power of the purse. And I know you, as someone who pushed not only to cut 15 million, but to cut more, believe in that. So I'm wondering, is that, given all of these problems in actually having control in the short term over the police, do you believe that defunding the police is one mechanism you could use to, if not directly control, shrink the size of the police?
Sure. I mean, some of our only power in this moment is cutting the budget or cutting their position authority. And I'm ready to continue chipping away at that. The fall bump is our next opportunity to do that. I will say, I want to direct everyone to Commissioner Hardesty's website, Rethink Portland, for her vision and shared community vision of rethinking our approach to public safety, as well as Reimagine Oregon, which is a group led by a group of Black community leaders and advocates. And they have really been guiding the city quite a bit on the whole divest, invest conversation. I've been looking into whether we could pull traffic enforcement out of PPB and into PBOT. Another example of something that I believe, I'm a big fan of local power and have spent a lot of time fighting back against incursions on that local power by the state. But that ability to move traffic enforcement out of the Bureau is entirely within the state's power, not within ours. So I will end by saying, yes, fall bump is our next chance. Commissioner Hardesty's ballot measure is vitally important to this conversation. And then bargaining that contract. This council was cheated out of the opportunity to bargain the contract that's coming up, because former Mayor Hales decided to do that in advance of Mayor Wheeler and I taking our seats. So I'm really looking forward to finally getting a crack at this contract. And then the last thing I'll say, sorry, I didn't think I had much to say tonight, is that at the same time we are cutting budgets and cutting position authorities and taking responsibilities away from the Bureau, we also have to be prepared to invest in the community, and we have to stand up systems and structures that are going to be able to meet the needs of the community that we're no longer asking the police to meet. And that, again, it's going to be a process. We need to work together. I also saw questions in there about the rights of protesters, and I'm going to refer you to the ACLU, our local ACLU website. They've got great information, knowing your rights when you're protesting, and leave it there. I really didn't mean to take up that much time.
No, that's fine. There's one other thing you raised, though, that Lockanna mentioned we should talk about, the settlement agreement. So PCCEP, our birth mother, was the settlement agreement, which is weird to think of the DOJ as your mother. But that agreement was declared, we're in the maintenance tier of substantial compliance, but given the kind of unconstitutional policing that we've seen happening over the last few months, it's not clear that the city will continue to be in substantial compliance. And so it's not at all clear that that settlement agreement would go away. But what do you see as the obstacle that the settlement agreement presents to reform? Because I think overtly or on the surface level, it looks like they're there to actually reform the police bureau.
I think that I can explain this satisfactorily, but again, there might be a city attorney that wants to jump in and correct any mistakes I made. This is in a nutshell. Commissioner Hardesty and I want to minimize the use of less lethal munitions against protesters because we think that will keep protesters safer. Any change in those rules or guidelines, though, has to go to the DOJ. And the DOJ, we believe, and we have very good reason to believe, will perceive our restrictions as potentially further endangering protesters, because if we take away less lethal weapons, they have a right to defend themselves, and they may be moved to use more harmful crowd control methods. I think I have that right. It's very concerning to me, but the last thing we want to do is complicate our disentanglement from the settlement. So that really we have to tread that line very carefully.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and there was that court decision in Seattle that is, I think, where this idea comes from. So we have a few more minutes, and I want to give a chance to Commissioner Ryan, who I don't believe we've heard from, as well as the mayor and any of the other commissioners who want to speak. Someone on the chat has asked that the PPB, and maybe that would be Assistant Chief Frome, would want to respond to the sort of issues that have been raised about police brutality. But Commissioner Ryan, would you like to say anything before we end today?
Yeah, thank you, Elliot. And thank you, PCCEP. This is my first engagement moment with all of you, and I'm actually taking away a lot. I want to start off by acknowledging the moment of silence at the beginning. I really needed that. It's been a really long day. It's been a long week already. And it was really helpful to get grounded with that. So I appreciate that. The things that popped out as I was putting this under the lens of budget was the overtime question, the settlements that were brought up, the specialty review, and just big picture, the transparency of the budget. I do think we've got to do a better job of making it clear on how we're spending all of our money. And so I will also say that the comment that was made that police violence is a public health issue was brilliant and necessary for me to be reminded of. I kind of am feeling the effects of that personally. I live out in North Portland, and many people out here were kept up late last night. It was a warm night, so my windows were open, and the intercom was quite loud. Finally, I was driving my partner crazy because I wasn't sleeping, and I got in my car and snooped around, and I saw a lot. And what I'm trying to say is, it was a lot of noise, and there weren't that many people out. And when I finally got there, I couldn't understand why there was so many announcements, and how it carries about a mile away. And anyway, it went on until around midnight. And I just wanted to say that I'm personally affected public health wise by being up so late because of the terrorizing that was happening in North Portland last night. And I say that from the announcements that I was hearing. And when I went there, I didn't see much. From the protesters, except mostly everyone was filming. And there was it seems like 75% of the people there were filming what was happening. So anyway, I'm taking a lot in right now. I can't answer any questions as well as my colleagues. I'm learning a lot. I'm really in a listening mode at the moment, and I really respect all of you. I will end with a little bird told me that Portland was mentioned 3 times in that debate that's happening tonight. And I'm really proud that in this city of Portland, there were a lot of people. It's been between 80 and 100 on this call that are really, really engaged in the most important issue of our time. So I'm very proud to be on the City Council at this moment in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. Mayor Wheeler, Mayor of the anarchist jurisdiction, would you like to say any last words?
Yeah, I want to mirror what Dan just said. There was an attractive alternative tonight in the presidential debate, and I appreciate that so many people chose to be here. It was a wide-ranging conversation. I'm grateful for it. It was really good. I think we got into some meaty issues that maybe weren't directly related to the budget, but I don't care about that. I actually really like the fact that we talked about munitions, we talked about accountability, we talked about collective bargaining and some of the realities there. I hope people will also be open-minded about some of the other ideas that we're interested in around policing. A lot of the focus tonight was around protest, safety demonstrations, police use of violence. I would feel guilty if we got to the end of this budget call and we didn't talk about gun violence. We have a very serious gun violence problem in the city of Portland. In fact, we've had record deaths, record gun violence in the city of Portland, and that's going to require some thoughtful work on the part of the city council, on the part of law enforcement agencies, and on the part of community service organizations. And so there will be an ask that I'll be bringing to the council to potentially increase the funding for Office of Violence Prevention for more community-based interventions and support for families and individuals that are impacted by gun violence in Portland. So I just wanted to put that on the table because it didn't come up yet today, but it's really important to me and it's something I'm going to continue to push for. But thank you, Lakiana. Thank you, Elliot. Thank you so much to all the members of the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing. I know you're also going to be hosting forums on re-envisioning what public safety could look like in the community, and I look forward to that as well. Thanks for your leadership.
Thank you. Assistant Chief Fromm, are you there? Is there anything you would like to say in response to the conversation?
I'm still here. And I mean, I'd like to thank everyone for sharing their truth with me tonight. We've got over an hour of comments to kind of parse through, and there's been a lot of questions. I'm not going to be able to get to everyone's questions tonight. But what I will say is that the people on this call are not the only ones disturbed by the nightly protests and the violence that goes on. There are people within the city government, there are people within the police bureau that have those same concerns, and we have to find a way to stop it. There are people that understand that there needs to be some radical changes in how we go about providing safety to the people here in the city of Portland. And maybe that doesn't look the way that it always has been. I'm just here to say, as the Assistant Chief of Services, I'm committed to try finding ways to make those changes. Thank you for what you shared tonight. And I hope that everyone has a very calm evening tonight.
Thank you. I'll just end with something that I know many of you believe. The budget reflects our priorities and our values. And so these discussions that you're going to be having with the fall bump is a reflection of what you believe. And we in the public will be watching and talking to you and holding you accountable as we should. Thank you to all the city commissioners for being here. Thank you to PPB, to the people from the City Budget Office, Jessica and Katie, for that very in-depth presentation. And thank you to all the PCCEP members, Theo, Claudia, Judith, all the people that make our work possible. This gives me hope in Portland in a time when there's very little hope out there. So good night. Check out the debate on replay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you.